Hey guys, Bolt here, and welcome to SP Studios. Now, this is going to be hopefully a little bit quicker than Dark Descent. We have only 1.5 pages of summary, like I said last time with Dark Descent. Um, I made this with the idea of not doing date by date by date, but for the most part, getting the bigger part of the story understood and kind of going through events. So last time I kind of did a mismatch and kind of was like boom, 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 like over here with like where people were. This one I tried my best to kind of do a timeline of events. And I am sorry if I get some stuff wrong because some of this stuff is a little weird. But for the most part, I think I got it. So it all starts with Oswald Mandis, which is our main character, our amnesia field MZ again. But unlike Justine, this one has more than a mention to Daniel than just some little letter. This one has a JoJo Bizarre Adventure connection. So 60 years following Dark Descent, Mandis is the owner of his family's meat production company, and this takes place in the 90s for the most part. Well, 1880s, 1890s. But in 1890, his wife Lily Beth died in childbirth to giving birth to their twin sons, Edwin and Enoch. I don't know. In his grief, he puts way too much money into his company. So like he worried about the safety of the employees. He tried to get more equipment. He basically tried to do the highest state of the art thing for all his equipment, which ended up, you know, almost like he bankrupted the company technically, but he's been trying to like push back on it. He even failed to get a loan from the bank. But anyways, to find an easy break, he turns to the notes of his great uncle Daniel. So this guy is the cousin to the grands. Well, he didn't have no kids, but if he had a kid, it would be his grandson's cousin. Is what Mandis is. So he is a family connection to our main character from the first game. So this is technically a sequel, a proper sequel. And because we get to see he has the notes from him and Alexander doing their stuff to get the Vitage or whatever it is. It's kind of like the remnant of this universe. It's just like the pain and suffering of others makes substance, makes energy that goes into orb thing, or into this point a machine thing, which we'll get to. But in Daniel's notes, he has the location of another orb in an Aztec temple in Mexico. He travels and discovers the orb, but when he gets in contact with the orb, it shows him a premonition or like a vision of his sons going to war, and I think it is World War I, and dying a pretty bad death. And to avoid this, he just upright kills them right there and sacrifices them to the orb. So it's just like to avoid a pretty bad like life and like death in the war, he just says, "Let's just get this out of the way and get my kids killed now." Which, as a if I was a father of kids, is like the only thing I might do is maybe break their legs so they don't have to go to war. You know, because I would not straight up kill my kids because a war premonition. It's like there's kind of ways to avoid them going to war. You know, because you can't avoid the war altogether. But that was something he had in his mind. So returning to London, um, through his grief and trauma, it ends up turning into anger and out of all the things to be angry at, he's just altogether mad at humanity. Um, without proper equipment, they could have probably eventually have saved Lilybeth. His kids would not have to go to war to die in the trenches. This is something that is something that he feels like it is a bigger issue that humanity has, which humanity is a pretty bad parasite to the world. I am personal thought of that. It's just we have such a bad negative thing. Just like if you have oil, you have something that we can profit off of. I'ma fight you for it. I'll kill you over it. We have such a bad mentality on stuff. Um, but he begins to cut corners in his company and proceeds to make the funds. And he kind of does things like he does child labor through an orphanage. And he does a lot of that kind of stuff to make up the funds from his bankruptcy. And then on top of that, he tries to make the machine for pigs, the machine, and he does it in the image of the Aztec temple. And he puts a part of his soul in the core. And I don't think we really touched upon, but I think the orb is also somewhere in the machine. But for the most part, his soul is the biggest part that powers the machine, kind of makes it work like clockwork. But also in the anger induced against humanity, he kind of has the same thing that he was trying to explain to how Alexander was explaining to Daniel, hey, well, yes, we are committing pretty bad, humane crimes against humanity, but we're doing this to criminals, we're doing this to the homeless, we're doing this to people on the corners of the street. I do not want to say the names of what it is that I called them in the actual reading of certain letters. But anyways, so he takes people that he thinks are kind of the scum of the earth, and he uses them to create vitage, and then on top of that, the blood is kind of like the oil for the machine. Through all this stuff with cutting corners, he's kind of got an attitude towards a lot of people. He's working hard on this machinery, and he's doing a lot of stuff that's not very characteristic of him. And a hunting organization that he is associated with, they send out Professor A to kind of do a wellness check on him to kind of see what's happening and why is he the way he is. And through it, not Daniel, Mantis is showing off the machine, but at the end of their tour, two things happen. A lot of the explanations that kind of seen is just saying that he got shoved into the river of blood and became a part of the normal process. But from what I seen as the key person who played it through, it looked like Professor A. There was a body in some glass right before the end where, destroying a brain and stuff. Well, no, there was a thing here that once you disconnected that, you can get into the temple and it pulls out the heart of Mandus and all that. There is a case with a body in it. And I really think that was Professor A put into it to kind of like, I'm trying to remember, the Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, the Doctor, like his mind and stuff kind of helps operate the machine. And it also would explain his voice kind of being a part of the whole thing, because as you're playing through the game, you can hear Professor A's voice through the telephone. He's kind of pushing you to get to this machine, make it, fix a few things, and then get to your children. But I think he puts something into the machine. I don't think he's just some sacrifice to the machine. I think he's a part of how it functions now. And then the body, so Mandus also gets parts of the Gatherers. So the monster from Dark Descent, the guy with the open jaw and a stitched together body, Those were like the Frankenstein monsters that Alexander made. He gets the body parts of that, and then he also gets the notes from Alexander to make Vitage. And he's just like, okay, well, so I can kind of make life and like an evolved life out of this, and he makes the pigmen through it. And basically, the pigmen are basically very similar to the gatherers. They're kind of just like a task giver, and he goes gets some victims, kind of like, it's kind of like an alligator in the sewer story, where a pig looking faced guy came and took this beggar off the street at night. That's kind of basically what it's about, instead of just Mandus himself going and getting him, or associates of the Mandus company. That way, it's just looking like a freak came out of nowhere, took this nobody and ran in. There was a batch of pigmen that failed by teleporting into, like, they can just randomly teleport between dimensions, and that's the electric pick boss that I seen at the very end. But the theory is that the dimension they teleport to is also connected to, is actually the dimension that Alexander, or is the place of origin of him. That's where he was trying to get to at the end of the game, the first game. There is a change that occurs where a part of his soul that he put into the machine, it seems to have taken over his anger for humanity. So, his anger of humanity and the voice of that Professor A to kind of like mix it into like a separate being. But because it kind of takes on that anger, Mandus is able to kind of like get a clarity moment where it's just like, holy crap, I've been doing a lot of stuff wrong. And as he's kind of like leaving for home that day, it's just like time to sabotage this machine so I can shut it down. Can't do any more thing to anyone. And when he returns home, a thing I didn't mention before because I feel like it's kind of a weird thing to mention. It might have been the reason why he has anger, but it doesn't. It kind of makes no sense now. It affects him now. But there's a sickness he got when he went to Mexico. So he went to Mexico, got the orb, sacrificed his kids. He got a sickness, and then on his way home, made all this machine and cutting corners and sacrificed human beings. But eventually, the sickness catches up with him, and when he gets home, he's so exhausted from the sickness puts such a stress on his body that he has to fall asleep. And because of that, it also affects his mind, which explains his amnesia. And basically, it's just like the whole game is just like, I kind of understand where I am. I know my background. I know I had kids. Basically, it sounds like before his trip, he snapped back to right before his trip to get the orb. And then, like, as he goes, he's starting to learn, like, oh, gosh, my company and me have done a lot since I remember. And it's just like this Professor A voice is kind of like, hey, I know where your kids are, luring him to the machine. The professors, well, I'm just going to say I'm trying to remember what I would call them, just like the messenger is what I'll call it, calls that a saboteur is trying to get ahead of him to try to stop him from, receiving his kids. And he's trying to fix behind the saboteur, and there's even some things like as you're going through some of his thoughts are like, the saboteur in this moment was trying to go a little quickly here, so he wasn't able to properly do it. It's just because him, when he's trying to get home, probably was feeling that sickness and that weariness and stress on his body, where he's like, okay, I gotta do whatever I can to dismantle this machine so I can get out of here. But eventually, he eventually comes into the, like, power room to start the machine. And then the messenger, his soul / Professor A is just like, all right, thanks for repairing the machine. Now we can go with the final plan and release the pigman onto the city of London, and like make the do what the machine was made for. And it's kind of like, because there's a part his soul in there, he has to sacrifice himself. That way, both both his body and the soul in the machine completely die off. Um, I also think that Professor A may have actually had some kind of like, ooh, I like where this is going. You know, he probably could have also been like thought about it, but anyways, it's just like no matter what, part of Mandus was hatred. The other was just a family man who was in grief and sorrow. Um, and once you separate the two men, the other one will try to stop the other, or the other one will try to like hail over the other with what greatness he's going on, and just like that machine plunges into his heart, kills him, turns off the machine. The pigmen, you know, they were probably still like, you know, sentient enough to be human. So like they were still having to do what they were told to do, but they're probably there was like it said like it sounded like there was happiness in the shutting down of the machine. So I think it was like the human part of them were like in in delight that it's getting shut down. So not only do the pigmen go to die off because there's no more, once the meat runs out, there's nothing for them to eat. So the pigmen will die down, the machine will be forgotten, and then it was in 1899 that the game takes place. So the turn of the century happens, which I needed to really look up what the heck 20th century stands for, because I guess 1900s is what 20th century means, which confuses the heck out of me because I'm guessing there's an extra 100 years that we're counting a part of this. Because that's confusing. But anyways, yeah, I guess like with the 1900s, we start getting to the wars and stuff, and it's kind of just like one man, even though he might go on a hell dive, his thing will hurt more people than the help that he's trying to provide, is basically what it is. And it's just like the way humanity will go, not one single man can do it. There needs to be a whole bunch of people willing to back him so that the group can eventually, you know, take over a good population of it so that it can change. So it's just like, if humanity doesn't change, you know, we're already looking at a possible World War III. Almost every time we hear some kind of fighting, it's like, when will it happen? At this point, we're just kind of like twiddling our thumbs, waiting for it to happen, and that's a bad thing. It's like, so why is us as humanity are waiting for a war that is basically, from what a lot of people are saying, is the war to end wars, or the one that's going to set us back so bad, because unlike World War One and Two, World War Two, we kind of ended it by the scare of nukes. Well, every country has a nuke, and it's just going to be, and we're already looking at it where citizens are no longer out of the line of fire. So, not to get into a lot of this stuff, but it's just like, it kind of shows that one man might be like, if humanity doesn't change, and if I want to try to do something to change it, if humanity fights back on that one man, he will lose. Because humanity is lazy. Basically, I'd rather just live my life, sit and play my Xbox or PlayStation or PC, and if something happens, something happens. And I'm hoping there's a lot of people, like, we're already having people like Matt Pat, where they're coming out of the way to talk, not for humanity as a whole, but small parts of like, change is happening. And we really need to try to, like, learn from things like this, where it's just like, the story of humanity and its future is literally right there, and humanity will eventually kill itself out if we can't fix it, because we all want the, like, best for ourselves and our loved ones. So we'd rather trample over other people. And yeah, it's just not to like get into a huge moral battle with people in the comments, but it's just if something like this is telling a story of just like if humanity was better and we worried about things that actually could benefit us, we'd be in such a better spot. But anyways, not to like blabber on and do much more, but I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.